So here we have the wonderful Liz Dyde.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I started off as a psychotherapist. I've probably been doing that for about 12 years now. And then I added lots of other tools to my bag, really. I practice in Stratford-on-Avon, and I do things like emotional freedom technique, hypnotherapy, NLP. But a few years back I started to specialise in pain, and this is pain from a psychological perspective rather than a physical one, because I found that when I was treating people from an emotional perspective, they started to tell me that their physical pain was getting better too, and that was when I really started to look at what the connection was actually between the mind and the body, and I started to get into physical pain. So today I'm going to talk to you about fibromyalgia. Have we got any sufferers? Yeah, okay. Me too, have been. I'm pleased to say I'm recovered. But what I speak about today, you can apply to really any sort of physical pain. I'm going to specifically talk about fibro because it's a subject that's close to my heart, because I've had it and recovered. And one of the things about fibro is that people think that they can't recover, and I'm here to tell you that you can. So, what do we know about fibro? Well, 1 in 25 people in the UK suffer from fibromyalgia. It's kind of become an epidemic. I had it back in the 1990s, and it wasn't so well known then. It can be quite difficult to diagnose because obviously it's widespread pain. Those of us who've had it, got it, know that. Excruciating pain. And lots of things have to be ruled out first, but there's no real blood test or anything that can actually say, that's it, you've got fibromyalgia. What we do know is that most sufferers have tender points in different parts of the body. Can I ask you two ladies that have it, do you have the tender points?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. Mine was specifically in my shoulders and in my arms, but it would go all down one side of my body into my feet, and I had pins and needles. One of the big fears we have when we have fibromyalgia is whether we've been diagnosed properly. I know I thought that I'd got maybe MS, or because I was just sort of experiencing symptoms which were not just pain. So the tender points are quite important, and indeed after I recovered from fibromyalgia, the tender points were still there for a couple of years, so I could still feel them if I went for a massage or whatever. Still got that feeling. As you probably know, it has links with other things. So often people with fibromyalgia have ME, chronic fatigue. They may have other symptoms like IBS. And these myriad of symptoms seem to get treated all in different ways, and nobody really brings it all together. Which was why when I started to work with the chrysalis effect, that obviously do bring it all together, I thought, I'm home. But I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go. So yeah, difficult to diagnose. We don't actually get much help apart from medication. That's all I was given. I was given painkillers, muscle relaxants, those kinds of things. The big thing that the doctor said to me was, you've got fibromyalgia, it's more than likely you'll have it all your life. What? Fortunately, I've got the kind of personality type that thought, I'm not having this all my life. And I actually had it first time around for 3 or 4 years. Managed to get rid of it without knowing how. But it's only when I started to work with pain that I realised how I got rid of it. And I'll sort of speak a bit more about that later. But can you see how when experts tell us things like that, it reinforces our beliefs? And beliefs are really important in terms of the recovery from this illness. We have to believe that we can get better, because we can, but we also have to believe it. Okay, so this might be a different perspective to what you've perhaps heard in the past, but it's my belief that fibromyalgia is a mind-body illness, and it's due to the stress that we've experienced in our lives, and we sort of go into a place where we're continually in a fight or flight response. What happens to us as well is that we often repress the emotions that go with that stress because we're the type of people that just get on with it. We're very driven, we're often very conscientious. I'll talk a little bit about the personality traits because that's quite an important part of it. But that's what we do, that's the way we operate. And it's those repressed emotions actually that are the origin of the pain itself. So I first came across really how to treat this when I started reading the work of Dr. John Sarno. Has anybody come across him? Yeah? Okay. And what he said made perfect sense to me. He said that the stress in our lives comes from 3 different areas. We've got maybe difficult childhood experiences, and you know that kind of never leaves us, and it often gets triggered in later life. We've got the stress in our adult life, and you know life is very stressful, isn't it? No matter what you do or where you go, stress always comes into it somewhere. But we've also got these personality traits. Now the personality traits are sort of a bit like the icing on the cake. They're the things that help to keep the pain going. So do any of you recognise any of this? Are any of you perfectionists? Yeah? Or if you're not perfectionist, because I always say I'm not a fully blown, what we call a type A, but I'm sort of 3/4 of the way there. So I'm very conscientious. I like to see things right. I like to do a good job. If I do anything, I want to do it right. And you know, you're probably the same. You might be quite driven, quite analytical, you know, quite like to know things. Your brain processes a lot. You know, the way you think is kind of on the go all the time. Another thing that we like to do is we like to please people. We always put everyone else first, and we're always at the bottom of the list. Is this sounding anywhere near familiar? Yeah. Well, it's these personality traits that actually exacerbate any of these type of illnesses we have. And because we've got these personality traits, we show the world a good face. Everyone thinks that we're really strong, but actually they don't know what goes on inside. We always help everyone else. We're always there. Maybe in families we're the peacemakers, the one that help everyone else to get on, but actually our own needs often don't get met. One of the other things about fibromyalgia is that the research shows that probably at least 1/4 of fibromyalgia sufferers actually had abuse in their childhood. So that might be physical abuse, it might be emotional abuse, it might be sexual abuse, it could even be neglect.
I just want to say this just in case it's... Do you mind?
Not at all.
Something's come up for me over the last week.
Brilliant.
From my childhood that I had no idea about.
Fantastic.
And it's as a byproduct of my son being at home that it's brought it up. I haven't talked to you about this yet, but I will.
This sounds exciting. Yeah.
And it's been painful.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. I knew the impact that it had had on my younger brother, because it was an older brother, father issue.
Right. Yeah.
It's not sexual abuse.
No.
Violence.
Okay.
And I'd always sort of, not pitied, but empathised with my younger brother because he was in the room when it happened.
Right.
But it happened in the middle of the night, this incident.
Yeah.
And I've been sort of connecting my sleep issues that I've had since my childhood. And I think it's all around that period of time. And because it was a violent act in the dark, in the night, when everything was quiet.
Yeah.
And it's, I'll talk more to you about it. I just want to throw it in case.
What a fantastic insight. And you see, what will have happened is, over the years, that has been buried in your unconscious, because our conscious tries to look after us and you know, keeps it down there out of our way. But often what happens is we get triggers. So what happens a lot of years later, something will trigger it off. We don't necessarily know it consciously, but that's what makes us poorly, makes us feel ill, because we've had a trigger back to that incident. So that is, I think that's going to be really helpful to you. Painful, yes.
Yes, extremely.
But helpful, ongoing. So, and those are exactly the things that we're looking for when we talk about repressed emotions. What we have to do is we have to get those emotions out. We have to pull them out and deal with them, but we don't always know what they are. And you know, and you're saying you know, you're
Yeah.
starting
I
on
mean,
that.
I'm 62, and that's the first
Fantastic.
inkling
I know.
of the impact that that had on
Yeah.
me.
Painful, but celebrate because you know.
And I mean, I've always known since my son was born that he's my healer.
Yeah.
Not, oh, they're their mum healer, but it's just like things happen, and I think it's him
Yeah.
and his fault.
Right.
But over the last few years, I know it isn't. I know it's just fetching all this stuff up from way, way back.
Absolutely. And you know, we all have those triggers. So you know, anyone else, look for those. If you're feeling particularly bad or your pain's particularly bad, ask yourself what's been going on. You know, what have you been thinking about? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I see with clients who've got fibromyalgia, and this is kind of like a little study I've done of the people that I've dealt with, and it kind of reflects my experience too. Often there's a conflict of values going on. They might be in the wrong job, or they might be in a job where the manager's a bully, and they may have been bullied themselves. They may have come from a violent background, they might have been bullied at school, those kind of things. There's often problems in a relationship, sometimes an intimate relationship, you know, feeling of things not being right, not being in the right place, feeling trapped, not being able to move on. Might be problems with other relationships with parents, siblings, sisters and brothers, those kinds of things. We often find as well that there are often early attachment issues with primary caregivers. So if there are problems with mum, you know, when the person was born, this can often sort of come out a little bit like you're saying later life, and sometimes it doesn't come out for a very long time. And this is the kind of work that we're trying to do, is we're trying to build the picture of the things that we need to look at. So for that reason, if you can see this, pain is always a message. That's why we get pain, is it's to give us a message about something. But sometimes it's really difficult to work out what that message is. I know I didn't work out what it was. Just going back to my own experience, when I had fibromyalgia, I was in a high-flying job. I'd been given a high promotion and told, take over this department, it's in a real mess, sure you'll be able to sort it out. You're the only one. How many times have I ever been told that? You're the only one that can do it. Thanks for all that responsibility. So I get into the job and it's 1,000 times worse than anyone thinks. Lots of accountability and whatever going on. And that's when I started to get the pains. But I never put the two things together. Never thought that they were connected. Went to the doctor and all of that. And, you know, and it took quite a while. But interestingly, when I reflect back, the fibromyalgia went away when I'd got the job under control, when I'd asked for help, because that's another thing we're not very good at doing. We're not actually very good at asking for help, because we think, you know, we've got to get on with it. And that's, to me, that's one of the learning things that we have to do. And I asked for help, got it, got the job under control, and 3 or 4 years later, fibromyalgia went away. Interestingly though, back in 2004, 2005, still in the same high-flying job, travelling all over the country, different things, my mum starts to get dementia. I'm an only child, again all that responsibility, and interestingly most of the pain was actually in my shoulders. Getting all sorts of phone calls in the night, and lots of conflict going on about what was the best thing for her, because there was a part of me that knew that eventually she was going to need 24-hour care, and none of us want to see our parents do we put into nursing care. And that was when I had problems with my knees. So I went to the doctor with the first knee, and he said, oh, it's bound to be arthritis. Never gave me any tests or anything like that, but I was doing Ciroc at the time, where you spin on this knee. So I blamed the Ciroc and said, oh dear, I'll have to give up the Ciroc, because you know, that must be the reason for it. So I had acupuncture and whatever, and the pain went away in that knee, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's it, it's gone. And what happens, it comes back in that knee. I'm doing a lot of decorating because I just bought another house, so I'm spending my time on the floor. So I blame it on that. Oh, it's all that decorating I'm doing. But eventually, the pain went in both knees, and you'll be pleased to know I've been pain-free ever since. But again, what I did was I sorted out what needed to happen. And it was when I was reading one of the Sarno books, and he actually says that we're in conflict when we're looking after someone, we're caring for someone, and we're trying to do the best that we can, but actually there's a little part of us that's angry. And I kind of recognised that in me. I was angry about, every time I went somewhere, I'd get a call in the middle of the night or something like that. And because there was only me, there was no one else to call on. So do you see what and the pain was giving me a message, this needs to be sorted out, you need to ask for help. And once I got all that sorted out, actually my pain went away and has never come back. So if that gives you any clues about your own pain, you know, please use it. So I'm just going to go on a little bit now and just talk about how we can recover. The very first thing is to recognise that it's a mind-body illness, and you can heavily influence your recovery, because as Dr. Sarno says, the same mind that caused the pain is the same mind that can take it away. And he always says that education is the penicillin for this illness. And he doesn't mean education about knowing the ins and outs of the illness. He means educating about the fact that it is a mind-body illness, and what is it that's causing it. What's causing us this stress? How can we deal with it? How can we put it right? So beliefs are vital. You need to believe that you can recover. One of the big things that we teach people to do is therapeutic writing. Do any of you write? Do any of you write about the way you feel?
Not often enough.
No. Okay. Because that is really very, very good for pain. Often you can write pain away. You know, some people will write, and then they'll finish writing and realise that actually their pain's a lot better.
Isn't that focusing on it though?
Well, sometimes you have to focus on it. It's a bit of both. What you're focusing on though is not the pain. You're focusing on your feelings. And if you write about the way you feel, it might be anger, it might be grief, sadness. There's all kinds of emotions that are in that unconscious pot. But if you get used to writing about the way you feel, that will help immensely. Things like unsent letters. Write to people that have hurt you. You don't need to send them, but just the writing of them is therapeutic. A lot of research about therapeutic writing. If you're a researcher, Lynn, and I know you are, research James Pennybacker, and he's the sort of godfather of therapeutic journaling. The other thing that I think is really important is laughter. We often don't have enough laughter in our lives, and you know, like you were saying about going to your show, isn't it great when you kind of feel part of something, and to see something live, it's really good. And laughter, of course, helps the endorphins, doesn't it? It's a natural pain reliever anyway, but none of us do enough of it. Obviously, you've got to look at what's wrong in your life and what you can put right. And a lot of people say, "Oh, yeah, but it's impossible. You know, I'm in this position, I can't move out of it." Susan said earlier, there's always a solution, and there is. It's just about finding it and finding what's right for you and the people that are around you. But don't ever believe I can't, because there is always something. And you know, with a little bit of help, you know, you'll be able to make it a lot better. Recognise your self-induced pressures. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Pressure on ourselves to be good, to be perfect, all those kind of things, to do things for other people, and that exacerbates the pain. So if your pain's bad, ask yourself what pressure you've been putting on yourself. What have you been thinking about? What have you been over-analysing? All those kinds of things. One of the big things, though, is to find ways to relax and to slow the mind. You know, lovely meditation and those sorts of things, yoga, anything that slows your mind down is really brilliant, because our minds don't do anything else but keep on the go all the time, and they keep sort of going round and round and round and round, and we think that's normal. And so when we might say to partners, "What are you thinking about?" and they say nothing, we can't believe them. That makes sense.
Yes. Lucky bugger.
Absolutely. Also, find people who've recovered and talk to them. Spend your time with positive people, because people drain our energy. You know, and if we're around negative people, often it can make our pain worse. Learning to breathe properly. Oh, how many of us just breathe from here? We don't do nice deep breathing, so that's another thing that helps the pain. We can't change our personalities, of course we can't, but we can actually modify the behaviour that goes with them. So if we find ourselves doing a lot of people pleasing, doing a lot of putting other people first, it's time to look after ourselves, and it's time to give ourselves a bit of compassion, and that's really important. What I found was that these type of illnesses usually get you to give up something that you love doing. When I had fibromyalgia the first time, I gave up badminton, squash, love playing those sort of things, but it's very difficult to do with an arm that, you know, it's really painful. With my knees, because I actually think that was probably fibromyalgia and probably not arthritis, but we don't care what a label we put on it, because it's damn painful. But I gave up Ciroc, because I thought that was the best thing to do. So I would encourage you not to give up things that you love, because that was the big mistake that I made. Yes, it's really difficult to do things when you're in pain, but you know, the more that you can try and work through it gently, the better. Because I always thought I was wounded and that I would get worse if I did something physical. So if we can get away from that way of thinking and think, well,
Sometimes that's compounded by people around you as well.
absolutely, we don't do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, is it a good idea to do
yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. But once you start getting new beliefs about, I can get rid of this pain, I can work through it, that all starts to help. Also learn to pace, because sometimes we do too much. Our type of personalities don't have many boundaries, and so do you recognise this in yourselves? If you want to get a job done, you'll work until it's done, and it doesn't really
Not
matter.
anymore.
Well done. Well done.
Can't?
No, but that's why you can't, is your body's said, no, do too much. And so it's about pacing and learning that when we have a lot to do, we need to break it up into nice chunks, rather than trying to think we're invincible if you do it all in one go.
Or go out.
Absolutely, go out and enjoy yourself. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to say. Obviously there's plenty of time for you to ask questions. I'd recommend you read Dr. Sarno. One of the other guys that's written quite a lot about fibromyalgia and indeed pain across the board is Dr. Howard Schubiner. I don't know whether you've ever come across him. You can Google him. He's done a nice little book called Unlearn Your Pain. It's SCHUBINER. And one of the new doctors on the scene, has anybody come across Dr. Lissa Rankin? Oh, okay. You must have a look at her. She's fantastic. She was a doctor in the States, having her own health issues, and she realised that people that were coming to her, she was always giving out medication and whatever, and she started to ask people different questions, and she said to them, with this illness that you've got, what do you think would help? What might cure this illness? She was expecting them to say, oh, give me some more medication or give me an antidepressant. And they answered things like, I need to change my relationship, I need to get out of my job, I hate what I'm doing or whatever. And she suddenly realised there's a different way of handling medicine. So she has what she calls her perfect storm, and she goes and leaves the medical profession completely. And she says, you might be able to leave something like that, but you can't leave your calling. So she kind of got called back into it. But what she does now, she trains other doctors how to treat people more holistically. And we were talking about life purpose earlier. She does some really good stuff on your calling, and your life purpose might actually be telling other people about your journey that will help them to be able to recover quickly. So we've all got one, and it's. But she'd probably be quite a good person for you to have.
That's part of the whole personality thing, isn't it? To almost demean what you are capable of doing and are doing.
That's absolutely right.
And
minimise
think,
it.
Yeah. And think, oh, so-and-so's doing this and so-and-so's doing that for charity, and I should be doing that.
Yeah, I should be.
Instead
Notice
of
that should. Yeah.
Instead of this is what I'm actually doing.
Absolutely. We do a lot of shoulds and musts, don't we? I must do that, I should do that. Yeah. So that's the end of my little presentation, but you're very welcome to ask any questions.
Can I go to the loo, please?
Well, this is our comfort break.
Oh, is it?
time,
Oh,
so,
good.
But of course, Liz is going to be.
Yeah, I'm going to be here.
So if you need to go.
I do.
Oh,
When you got to go, you got to go.
absolutely.